I am confident that he would be fair to all concerned. And that was my primary consideration in proposing his name. Again, I don't have any ownership. I just wanted to provide you with an option. If you have a different proposal, if you want to recruit or throw it open or do some selection process or the like, happy to do that. But I wanted to provide you with
one question I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Did you consider anybody else? And do we have anybody else?
Well, did I consider? Yeah, sure. Did I meet with anyone? No. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Where would these hearings take, provided there was a hearing, where would they take place at?
That's a good question.
Could be in this room, could,
Yeah.
at any room, any place that we designate, but it could be here, it could be at the conference room, Rib Street as well.
Okay, I was just curious, because I mean, some of those could maybe potentially get...
Could be in here.
There's nothing that would preclude the hearing officer from designating the location of the hearing at a place more convenient to the appellant, if you will. There's nothing that would preclude that.
So he can maybe go to Doyle,
Sure.
go to Westwood, go to Susie,
Sure.
wherever the...
You bet.
But he wouldn't necessarily go to Doyle if the guy he was having the hearing was from Beaver.
Well, I would certainly hope not, and if I know him, that would not occur. Sir.
So your discussion with him and then he feels good about it?
Yes, yes. I specifically had a meeting with him to discuss this. We went over, essentially what we would expect, and what we would expect is fair application of the ordinance for all concerned, and most particularly assuring the Board of Supervisors, because that's essentially who would be appointing him, that the rights of the accused would be respected, at the same time the spirit of the ordinance being enforced.
Good.
And so what I wanted to mention was that there is a proposed contract for that purpose for a one-year time period. And, it's for a one-year time period. If the 1 year comes and goes, essentially this growing season, if you will, and the board is unhappy or it doesn't go the direction you like, a change can be made. We're not, let's say, married to them.
Just 1 year contract.
Yes, sir. Now, the contract that is in your packet, there have been some changes to in one area, and there's a whole bunch of copies that I put out on the desk here. No, I would like to, and I got wrapped up in my presentation about the hearing officer part. I didn't pass these out. I'm sorry. There's one change, and it relates to the insurance issues that you just go ahead and leave them there for anybody to take. Thank you very much. The insurance issues that he's obliged to have, as you know, there is no county-wide standard insurance policy for independent contractors. The change essentially was that, and this should comport with his other contract that the county has, that the district attorney's office has, as I understand it, and that is that his individual carrier limit per incident is down to $500,000, but his aggregate amount is up from $1 million to $1.5 million. So it's kind of a change on two fronts there. The important point is that there's a hold harmless clause and indemnification clause in this contract that remains, which we would not agree to otherwise.
What's the pleasure of the board? You got a motion?
I have one other question. Is there a cap on this contract?
$5,000.
That's what I thought.
Yes, sir.
Do you anticipate meeting that cap, or 100, or what's? I mean, I know this is all.
That's hard to predict.
And it's very hard to predict.
Yeah, I've thought about that. And by the way, it's important to note, and this was in the document that was posted in the agenda, the payment schedule. The payment schedule contemplates a $1,000 payment to Mr. Howe at the beginning of the execution of the contract. And then, regardless of how many hearings he presides on, in fact, it would be paid initially. And then he would work against that $1,000 at $100 an hour up to the $5,000 cap. And so the $1,000 gets paid whether there's a hearing or not. And the reason that that was included that way was because of the need to pay for his availability. If you recall from the marijuana cultivation ordinance, the enforcing officers are vested with the authority to schedule a hearing within 5 days' time. Excuse me, no shorter than 5 days, but right at 5 days. And that requires a certain guarantee on our part that we have that mechanism in place and can proceed that way. And that's the reason that that schedule was created that way. But I can't predict. I'm uncertain at this point how many. We're working towards gaining compliance from folks who, might otherwise not really want to, but see it out there anyways.
So that $100 an hour, would that apply to his travel to Westwood or Beaver or wherever he goes?
Well, the contract contemplates $100 an hour for preparation for hearing and rendering decision and the like thereafter. So it's time spent on individual cases. I did not include that. Travel to and from hearing. I can do that if you like, or exclude that specifically, whatever the pleasure of the board is.
We're going into our water, I don't know.
Yeah, we really didn't expect that hearings would be going anywhere else other than the county seat. And in such a case, it would not be. He's on the clock when he arrives here.
How are you proposing to fund the $5,000?
I sought out the advice of Mr. Egan. Maybe you want to comment on that?
Sure. With regard to the point about travel, the contract was drafted with the presumption that the hearings would occur in county seat, but there wouldn't be any travel. So that's kind of a nuance that we should talk about. I guess I would recommend to contain our costs that we conduct those hearings here, so there isn't travel time.
And also, there's got to be some security issues about that also.
There may be.
Yeah. And
So I would suggest that we don't conduct hearings in other parts of the county. As far as the estimate of the $5,000, that is what we expect would cover the hearings, although we don't have any experience in the number of hearings that we might have. That would provide for 50 hours of the hearing officer's time. If we get to the end of that 50 hours, or it looks like we're going to get to the end of that 50 hours before the end of the fiscal year, we would have to revisit that. Hopefully we don't, but that's an estimate we made without having experience. Next year we'll have a better idea.
Kind of a fine point, and not one that I think necessarily has to be made, but the contract didn't necessarily need to come to you, as it's within the purchasing authority of the CAO to execute. Nevertheless, transparency being what transparency is, I wanted you all to have a look at it, to know what's going on, that we're ramping up for possible hearings. We hope not, but we need to be ready, and that's why it was included.
No, Mr. Chairman, that was a wise choice to do that. But my question still hasn't been answered. How are we going to pay for the $5,000? What is the source of the funding? Is it coming out of the CAO's discretionary fund? Is it coming out of the board's discretionary fund? Is it coming out of a fund paid by fees from the growers? I mean, how is it being paid for? Is it something that the taxpayers are just going to pay for?
It will be recommended in my budget to the board that it be out of the general fund expenditures, probably out of the non-departmental budget unit, which will require action by this board for next fiscal years.
And that's what I noted on the fiscal impact. That's what I noted on the fiscal impact of the agenda. But let's revisit, if we can, the marijuana cultivation ordinance, because if you recall, there's specific provision in there to lien the costs associated with hearings that occur and/or enforcement actions that occur. And it would be my expectation that, like we do in the abatement process, those are pursued and lodged. And
We up front the money for the abatement, and then we're faced to put a lien on the property to recover the...
sometimes it's slow, but it persists.
Well, Nancy always gets her guy.
You know, the fine is paid by the, whatever, where does that money go?
That would also be a general revenue.
We'll go back to,
medical providers.
Mrs. Spencer, you have a question?
There's a reason why he's not going to give you the account number, because it's probably going to come out of the Chamber of Commerce fund then. There's no account number, and normally there are. So, you know, it's good that you want to pin it down, because there is no account number, and it'll probably come out of the Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Burns has known Mr. Howe, like you said, over 20 years. And Mr. Burns also is very much aware, as I think all of you are aware, that he's in the middle of a capital murder trial. And the perception of this $5,000 at this time to Mr. Howe, when it could easily go something like this to Andrew Hout, who normally does your grunt work and your grunt contracts and your stuff. The perception of this $5,000 now to Mr. Howe is going to be looked at, and I know Can We Help has had a lot of emails and phone calls. I fielded a lot of phone calls about the intention and the purpose of Mr. Burns wanting to give Mr. Howe $5,000. He's going to need everything. Give it to David or Joe or Evans or whatever his name is. There's lots of people he could give it to for this type of administrative duty. But to give it to Mr. Howe, who is involved in a capital murder case that this man ignored 4 years ago, and now wants to maybe screw it up and distract him. I mean, it looks bad, and we're going to bring that back to you for every person that votes for Mr. Howe. Thank you. I don't care whatever. That's it.
Thank you for your comment. If there's no case